Hello, my beautiful friend, and welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart. It can be excruciatingly painful. It can be exhilarating and freeing. It can be like an earthquake going off in your life. The dark night of the soul. I want to touch on this topic from three different directions. One, what is a dark night of the soul anyway? Number two, share my story with you so maybe you'll be able to relate and find some solace in that you're not the only one that's gone through this. And number three, 7 signs that you might be going through the dark night and how to get through it with as much grace and as little suffering as possible. I love the quote from the Dalai Lama that, as a spiritual being having a human experience, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Pain is inevitable as human beings, unfortunately, but suffering is optional. So that always gives me hope. Now, before I get into it, I want to say hi. If you're new to me, I'm Betsy Gutting again, and I am a soul guide, an intuitive life coach, and a psychic astrologer. And I love sharing the astrology, other empowering tools, holistic healing tools with you so you can feel empowered to free yourself, to follow your heart. I have a book called The Magic of Saying Yes. It's right behind me there. The Magic of Saying Yes, Answering Your Heart's True Calling. So if you're going through a dark night of the soul, that book is for you. I highly recommend that you get it. You work through the exercises. I talk about my dark night of the soul in it and give you many other tools, meditations, and other wonderful healing modalities to move through a dark night. Also, I just want to say this space right here, this YouTube channel, is for you. I hope you claim this as your sacred space where you can find your tribe and feel supported. So I invite you to subscribe, become a part of this community, and you'll get the notifications for the next video as soon as I post. So, the dark night of the soul. What is a dark night of the soul? You probably heard so many different kinds of ways of it being described. Concepts like death and rebirth, the phoenix rising from the ashes, the caterpillar, in the chrysalis about to come through as the butterfly. Basically, the way I see a dark night of the soul is a part of you has died. Some people call it an ego death. But your old self is no longer relevant. And that's the good news. The old self with the walls and the programming and the conditioning and all of the, the heaviness on who you're supposed to be and, what you're supposed to do that doesn't fit you, that can just melt away as your new self is being reborn. So the good news with the dark night of the soul is you are coming closer and closer to your true self, to your sparkly, true, soul-connected self. The dark night of the soul connects you to your soul, to your inner truth, to your wise knowing, and helps you live that more and more. It's also where your vibration is raised. Why do we have a dark night of the soul? Because our vibration, we go through some sort of an awakening that raises our vibration, and then we feel like we don't fit into our life anymore. We feel like something is really off. You know how maybe you've heard this before. Every human being has a need for belonging. We have a core need to feel a sense of belonging at home, at work, wherever we live. And what happens during a dark night of a soul is that we suddenly feel we don't belong anymore. We can feel like we don't belong in our marriage. We don't belong with our siblings. We don't belong, the current work that we're doing. And so that's where it feels like an earthquake is happening in your life. Very, very challenging. So my story of my own dark night, first of all, it was gradual for me. I had already had a series of what I call mini awakenings. I was reading, all the spiritual books. I was training to be an expressive arts therapist. I had gone through my training. I was leading workshops out of my home with the moms of my kids' friends on, how do you reconnect with your spirit? So I was already using a lot of the tools. I was starting to meditate. I was leading guided meditations for my students. So I already had a very, what I would say, a heart connection to, and a real, I felt very connected to my intuition, but I had not had a major explosive, is this my life kind of awakening yet. Then my kids, and I had already changed careers too. I had left the career as a lawyer. I had started doing stand-up comedy, which kind of brought its own mini awakening. I was having lucid dreams. I was having some like astral travel experiences. And then, as I said, I started doing spiritual teaching. So this is all background, so you know. Plus, I was living in this beautiful custom home that I had helped design. I loved my life. I was at home with my kids a lot of the time, which I wanted to do. So I was kind of like part working, working as a spiritual teacher out of my living room part-time, and the rest of the time I was being a mom to my kids, and I loved that. Fast forward, I started meditating, and I would have these deep, deep meditations because my youngest was finally in school, and so I had some extra time on my hands. So I was meditating for like an hour a day, and then some days like 2 hours. One of those 2-hour meditations, I had what felt like an explosive awakening, in the sense that all of a sudden it was like all the lights got turned on, and I saw life from a bigger picture. And it was like, oh my God, here I thought I was here to be like successful and have a family and have a beautiful home and, save for retirement and just kind of like make it in the world, right? What my awakening said to me was, no, that isn't your purpose. Those are all lovely things, but you're here to be the presence of love. You're here to love everyone unconditionally. You're here to do more with your gifts. It was really big. As soon as I had this awakening, I was like, we need to change our lives. I want to take the kids out of school, and I want to go do a humanitarian project. I want to do something. I want to reach more people. Like, I just felt this like surge of energy. And it was, my husband at the time was like, who are you? Who are you? What has happened to you? Where did Betsy go? That Betsy that I knew. So that's kind of the laying the groundwork for my story. I'll give you more tidbits as we go through the 7 signs. Let's talk about the 7 signs that you might be going through a dark night, because I didn't share with you the pain yet. I shared with you the like wonder and joy and exhilaration. I'm going to get into the pain of it for you as we go through these different signs. Okay, so the first sign of a dark night of the soul is you're seeking answers. For me, it was going to the bookstore constantly. That was my second home. I would just hide myself in this corner of the little new age section of my hometown bookstore. And I just read so many books. And it wasn't just that like I wanted to read there. It was that I needed a sanctuary. I needed a place to go to where I could be my wandering self. And what do I mean by wandering self? And you may also be like doing lots of workshops, listening to lots of YouTube videos on spirituality and awakening and ascension and so forth. YouTube didn't even exist when I had my dark night. 2003 was my dark night. 2005 YouTube started, so I didn't have these kinds of resources. So books were my best friends, because I didn't know anyone that had gone through what I had gone through. I had nobody to talk to about it. Sign number 2, you might feel completely alone and lost. Why would you feel lost? Because it's like you have one foot in the 3D earthly reality and one foot in the 5D. You have one foot in both worlds, as we say. And you may feel like you live in the middle of those 2 worlds most of the time. Maybe not even so much in the 5D. When I say 5D, I mean the place where nothing exists but unconditional love. astral travel, like a whole other plane of existence, right? Where there is no ego. And then 3D, where we have ego, we have things we have to do, we have bills to pay, we have, work to do, we have relationship challenges, all of these things. So you may feel like you have one foot in both worlds. I certainly did feel that way. You may feel like nobody understands you. Nobody would understand because nobody knows what you're going through. Your emotions might be all over the place. You may feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster. One day you feel so free and exhilarated and you're like, oh my God, I'm awake. This is it. I'm free. I'm going to be awake forever. And the next day you're like, what happened to my awakening? What happened to feeling free? I don't feel free anymore. Now I feel like burdened and bogged down, and I'm like stressed out about my relationships and my life and what am I going to do? And, I want to do this, but I don't have the money for it and blah, blah, blah. Like you may be your emotions may be all over the place. Sign number 3, hard truths. When you awaken, you wake up to something about your life or yourself that you haven't, and usually both, that you haven't seen before. So you start to see your own darkness, your own, quote, shadow. You see where you lose your temper. You see where you're not in alignment with what really matters to you. You maybe have a strong desire to change something about yourself. For me, I would lose my temper with my kids sometimes. Not like anything horrible, but to me, my sweet, sensitive, empathic soul, if I would raise my voice with my kids, I would be so sad, like so sad. It was making me tear up just thinking about it. So I really wanted to change that about myself. And I did the shadow work on it. I got in touch with my suppressed anger and I dealt with it in I moved it through me in constructive ways so that, I didn't have to lose my temper with my girls. You may also have, you may also find out that something in your life is completely it's not relevant for you anymore or it's dead. I realized that my marriage had died years before. That was probably the biggest earthquake that went off in my life during my dark night, was realizing that my marriage was dead and that if we were going to be together, we'd have to completely transform our relationship, completely transform our marriage. I'll get to that when I get to the last sign about relationships. You may also have, though, in addition to a hard truth, you may have a wonderful truth come through. I had a wonderful aha gift, as I call it, a treasure, a moment. For example, you might have realizations come to you in your dreams where something is given to you that makes you feel more free than you felt before. For me, I had a dream one night. I call it a message dream. It's where you feel like you're receiving like an angelic message or a message from spirit. And in my dream, my mother was right in front of me. I was facing her back and I was like gently arms on her shoulders, kind of giving her little kisses on her back. And I got this message from spirit and it said, you don't have to take care of her anymore. I'm going to cry again. You don't have to take care of her anymore. She's fine. She can take care of herself. So I had no idea before that I had been the caretaker for my mom my whole life. When I had this awakening, I was 43. Oh no, I just told you my age. I had no idea that I had been like my mother's mother in the way that I was, treating her my whole life. And I felt responsible. I felt responsible for taking care of my mom on an emotional level. So I was freed of that responsibility. And that was huge to me. Oh my gosh, it was the hugest realization probably that I had through that dark night experience. A huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Sign number 4. The material world doesn't hold the same importance to you that it held before. I remember shopping with a friend. I went all the way from Washington, where I was living in Seattle, to Massachusetts to see a friend. And she's like a friend that I've grown up with my whole life since 7th grade. Best friends. We used to love to go look in the shops together. We both love beautiful things, and we'd love to go, touch the fabrics and see the beautiful glass jars and all of that. We loved all of that. We did that one day, and I couldn't even go into the shops. You might feel at times like you are like in a daze, in a fog. All you want to do is sit and look at the water, the ocean, or sit by a river, or be in a forest. And that's how I felt then. Like I wasn't interested in shopping. I wasn't interested in buying things. I wasn't interested in the same things that I was before. Now I still like to shop, but it took a while for that to come back. It's almost like you lose your taste for some things. You know how some people say they lose their sense of smell or they lose their sense of taste? I, for a while, lost not my senses, but my desire to buy things, to go into stores and so on. I needed to be in a more pristine environment. I needed to just be. So with this sign, number 4, your interests have changed. You may just feel like I just need to be. Sign number 5, your values and or your beliefs change. You start to value other things. You may want to leave your job. You may want to downsize. You may, just have a complete new vision for your life, as I did. And it's very discombobulating, especially if you are married or partnered with someone else and they like the vision of the current life that you have together. And now you're like, I want to do it differently. Maybe you want to sell your house. Maybe you want to have your own business. It could be anything, but something often changes where you're like, I'm not comfortable here anymore and I need to make a change. And that can be very difficult. Sign number 6, and this is a very crucial one. Decision making, a major decision, becomes very difficult. So I'll give you an example, and it's because oftentimes we feel so stuck because both options don't feel good. So for example, for me, it was, I don't know whether to leave my marriage or not. I don't want to be divorced. I always believed that you could make a marriage work. I never believed ever that divorce was okay or that I would go through that or anything. And yet here I was realizing that our marriage had died and we were in very different places. And in spite of the counseling that we did together, we remained in very different places. So what do I do? It was very hard to make that decision, extremely hard. And so what I would do is I would write to Spirit. Every day I would write to Spirit. You may call it journaling. I journal as well, but this is more specific. This is, Dear Spirit, I'm so upset. I'm da 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 da. You pour your upset, your fears and all of that out onto the page, and then you ask Spirit to comfort you. You ask for answers and so on. This technique of writing to Spirit saved me. It saved my life. It got me through the dark night. And it's what I share in my book, The Magic of Saying Yes, because I needed that when I didn't have it. And I want anyone who's going through this to be able to have that tool to use to get through a very difficult experience. And I still use it all the time in my everyday life because we're always coming up on decisions that we don't, our ego doesn't understand what to do with, right? So it really helps me just to get through everyday life experiences to get the advice and the wisdom that I need from Spirit. Sign number 7, your relationships change. You have changed. You have changed. You're not the same person you were before, and you can't go back. You can't go back to who you were before. So you've changed. So of course your relationships are going to change. Some relationships will end. I had relationships with close friends end. My marriage ended. Some relationships can transform. Some people will stay with you, hopefully. But for that to happen, you both have to be at similar enough vibrations that you can vibe at the same place, right? And so that is one way that it's really helped me to get through all of this, is to know this is about vibration. This isn't personal. Although you may feel very emotionally hurt by betrayal, by feeling abandoned, by, shame coming up over, any number of situations. So know that those emotions and those situations are very common when you go through a dark night. And it's because there are relationships that are anchors in your life. Like my marriage was an anchor in my life, and I had to let that anchor go. And of course, that's going to throw you for a loop, to say the least, right? Any anchor you let go of, whether it's a job or a relationship or anything else, it's going to make you feel like, at times, like you're swimming out in the middle of the ocean all by yourself. But it will change. You will, where every void is filled. So you lose relationships, you gain new relationships, you will gain new anchors, but you are becoming a whole new person. So the butterfly, as he or she transforms, attracts other butterflies to enjoy life with. Okay, so as far as tips for getting through this, to summarize, get support. Do not try to do this by yourself. I got support. I worked with a coach during my process. I journaled a lot. I wrote to spirit, and I spent a lot of time in nature. Nature, going to my tree every day, taking walks every day. That was my lifeline to God. So most of us, we find sustenance in nature. So that is something that I highly, highly recommend that you do. So I am so happy that you're here with me today. I would love to know if any of this resonated for you. If it did, if it didn't, either way, drop me a comment below, let me know. And I am excited to be back very soon with another video for you. Until then, I wish you the most beautiful next couple of days, and I'm sending you all my love.